Hi folks, this is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of Jazz Piano Fundamentals and playing solo jazz piano. Hopefully that extra little push I'm giving with a little more speed, that will lead to more sales. That's what I'm counting on, is like the athleticism. Okay, this is part 3 of a little series I'm doing about adding chords that aren't listed on a lead sheet. This is something that jazz pianists do all the time. Whenever there's an open space and sometimes where there's not an open space, we frequently add in extra chords to create more color, more motion, and to put our own little personal stamp on things. To be honest, I don't really think about it anymore, and it's pretty difficult when I'm teaching to not add in some of these extra chords. So if you haven't checked out part 1 or part 2 of the series, I recommend that you do that. But what we're going to do today, which might be interesting in and of itself, is I'm going to play bits and pieces of a ballad that I love, which is called Always by Irving Berlin. And I'm going to see what chords I add, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. So it's just going to be a real hands-on way to learn maybe some new tricks or to watch the tricks that you've recently learned be put in context. So let's try it. I'm going to go to this camera view. And let me just play you these first 16 bars just so you can get the tune in your ear. And then I'm going to go about 2 measures at a time, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm doing. So here's kind of a vanilla version of Always. Beautiful tune, great lyric. So I didn't really add in anything extra there. But let's go bit by bit and brainstorm a little bit what we might add in. That's a little quick. So right off the bat, one idea is that we could add an A flat 7 on beat 4 leading to G minor. This is tonicization. Remember, tonicization is where you add in a dominant 5 chord, basically making it feel like this is a 1. But I'm doing the tritone sub, so I'm doing, instead of D7, I'm doing A flat 7. If this is sounding unfamiliar with you, go and check out part 1 of the video. Now, you'll notice that this G, that doesn't actually fit with that A flat 7 chord, but because it resolves, I don't really mind. And in fact, I could play that chord right with that G natural. It sounds awful by itself, but it actually sounds pretty good in context. Kind of like that. So all I'm doing there is I'm putting the F major over A, so that I have this kind of chromatic bass of A flat, G, do, A, do. I guess I could also do a double tonicization. I could go A7, A flat 7, G minor. Now, this is a spot in bars 3 and 4 where we have a ton of open space. So this would be a very traditional spot to add something in. So one thing that we could do is we could have kind of a call and response, right? Or an echo. And what I'm doing there is another tonicization plus tritone sub. You're probably going to hear that quite a bit. I'm playing a G flat 7. And in order to match that A melody note, I'm making sure that I have a sharp 9, because otherwise there will be a clash. We could also do a little 2-5-1. That would be going around the diatonic circle of fifths. I introduced it at the very end of part 2. G, C, D. Or I should be singing G, C, F. I got really confused. That'd be kind of nice. I could do a sidestep. And I could do E major 7. Again, does it match the melody? Not at all. But as long as we resolve it correctly, it's not going to be a problem. It could also be nice. We could do a more extended tonicization. We could add in a G7 leading to a C7, leading to an F7. That's a very tasty little progression. It makes that A a little bit more colorful. So I hope you can kind of see what we're doing here. All right, here. So let's experiment with planing. I talked about that in part 2 of the videos. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be aiming for that for the C7 with the 5th in the melody. So I'm going to make each of these a dominant chord with the 5th in the melody. Again, how am I coming up with these chords? I'm thinking about what dominant chord would have D in the melody. I'm thinking about what dominant chord would have E in the melody. And then I'm thinking about what dominant chord would have F in the melody. Ooh, that's actually kind of nice. And if we wanted it to be even more colorful, we could make this a tritone sub, so G flat 7. So this would have to have a flat 9. And then we'd have each of these chords be a dominant 7th with a flat 9. And this is going to take me a little bit more time to think about. E flat 7, flat 9. And D would be the flat 9 of D flat 7. So this is actually kind of a nice point for our James Bond progression. We go 5 to sharp 5, and then that leads beautifully into D natural, which becomes the 5 of the G minor. So 5 is C, sharp 5 is C sharp. Another very kind of natural thing to do here would be to do some tonicization to the G minor. And again, we have to put in some alterations on the dominant chord, but that's no problem at all, right? This is what we do in jazz. We're always putting alterations on dominant chords. The next two measures. So what if we did something leading into that B half diminished chord? That's kind of an interesting chord here. I'm tempted to do a sidestep, but then it doesn't quite work with the melody. If I do a C7, C half diminished, flat 5, right, we have this clash between the G flat and the G natural in the melody. So I could just make a different color of a C7, which I have to say I quite like. I think it's nice. Another moment where, even though it doesn't quite fit with the melody, I actually don't really hate using a G flat 7 here. And again, we get this chord that, out of context, pretty ugly. Because that, in context, does it bother me? Not really. But that's just me. I might be crazy. Another way we could do this is we could ornament the F major while we're here. we could go do a tritone subtonicization. And return to that F major. This is a big moment in the tune. We really change key, right? It'd be really nice to do a tonicization here because we get that sharp 5 in the melody. It's really colorful. And then, it would be really common on this F sharp 7 is that we could add in a diatonic circle of fifths. And instead of just having F sharp 7, the 5, we could do a 2-5 here. We could do C sharp minor to F sharp 7. It's just going to create a little more motion. Right. Again, it's nothing crazy. And we originally had this. Now we have very much the same, just a little more motion, a little more color. Continuing on. Pedagogically trying to think, what haven't we done yet? This is another nice place. This F7, we could justify it two ways. It's either a sidestep kind of leading down to the E7, or it's a tonicization with a tritone sub. So it'd be a B7 would be the tonicization of E7. But then we'll replace that with an F7. And definitely prefer that F7 because we get these alter tones, right? So we call this an F7 alt with the sharp 9 and the sharp 11. If we wanted to, we could go one step further and add an F sharp 7 here, but I'm not sure that it actually makes things better. It could be nice to add in a little diatonic circle of fifths action here instead of just hanging out on E7 to add some motion. This progression is really important here. I wouldn't add too much to it. It's kind of like rewinding the whole clock. It's like, okay, here's how we're getting from A back to F. So we really need to hit all those marks. If we wanted to add a little tonicization in front of these, we certainly could. So what did I do there? I did E flat to D instead of D. I feel like there's probably somebody watching this right now who's going like, why are you stuffing this tune with all these chords? It sounds good anyway. And I agree. I'm trying to overstuff it for now, just for educational purposes, to show you what's possible. So if we wanted to, we could create more chords, maybe using the diatonic circle of fifths, like G minor 7 to C7 here. Wanted to create that quarter note motion. Let's skip ahead because this is pretty similar to the beginning, but let's go to this D7 because that's kind of a long time on one chord, and those are really the biggest places where we're going to add. Yeah, so here most intuitive thing to me would be to go A minor 7, D7 here. Again, just another diatonic circle of fifths. But if we wanted to go even further, let's see, we could add an E flat 7 in between those. Sorry, you heard me instinctively do a little James Bond. Right, 5, sharp 5, 6, back. This is a really interesting moment to try a sidestep. I'm actually not sure if it's going to sound good or not. Usually, most things that I play for you, I kind of know how they're going to sound. This one, it could be a disaster. But you can see that the melody is going down by half steps. So we could call this a sidestep. We could also call it planing because we're moving with the melody. Let's see how it sounds. I don't hate it. Pretty cool. Let's see. Anything else we need to fill in here? I think that gives you a good idea of how I might go through. And, if I were going to plan adding chords to always, this is kind of how I would do it. I would do a little bit of trial and error. So to sum up, first thing you want to do is look for spaces where you are holding on to just a single chord. To me, tonicization, that is number one most useful. Sidestep, also very useful, but isn't always going to match the melody as well. The circle of fifths, the diatonic circle of fifths stuff, really, really useful to create motion without necessarily going, bananas and going way outside the key or anything like that. Watch the melody, but also keep the context in mind. I see so many students who choose not to use a chord because they think it sounds bad. But when I play it for them, resolving the way that it's going to resolve, they actually really like the chord. So even things that in isolation really don't sound good can be really useful. I hope you like this and subscribe, and pick up these books. These need to be in your collection, in your library. I will gladly sign them for you if you order them from me at jeremysiskind.com. Thanks so much.